With Worlds exactly a week ago, I think it's the perfect time to reflect on the entire thing.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfight, welcome back to another discussion video, and this is probably gonna be a long one as we're gonna take a look and discuss the entire World's livestream, which is basically 11 hours of content that we need to compress in a short video, because oh boy, there is a lot to talk about. As today I want to take a look at what happened at Worlds. Not only the livestream, that's gonna be the major part of this discussion, but also the tournament itself and the results. So basically the fights that we've seen on the stream, and of course the finals for Standard and Premium. I'm not gonna discuss Buddy Fight and Why Swartz, as that's not really something that we're interested on this channel. I might bring up some things that happened in those games, but that's basically for the bigger picture of how the tournament structure was run, or something that had to do with the live stream. So let's start off with just a fun fact information that is really funny for me personally, and in some context also for W Slasher. As the first match that was showcased on the live stream, basically round 2 of Premium, was a very interesting match, because my teammate from Springfest was qualified for Worlds for the Premium side, and W Slasher's teammate from Springfest was also qualified for Premium Worlds. And it's just so happened to be that both our teammates needed to square it off on round 2 on the livestream table. So it quite literally was a real life-size Pokemon battle between me and W Slasher, who had the best teammate. Spoiler alert, my team came victorious. Go Chris! So that was quite a funny thing to see, especially when I opened up the live stream and I just saw that familiar face. I'm like, nice. But now let's take a look at the finals for Premium and Standard respectively. I do want to clarify that I didn't watch the live streams directly when it was live. I only watched the beginning of the live stream, a couple of hours, and then I stopped because there wasn't really a lot to go for my interest, as Buddy Fight and Weiss was on stream. So I decided to go to bed because this thing was late midnight, around 3 to 4 o'clock, and I just decided to, when I wake up, maybe I catch the final match or just watch it on a later date. That's what I did. That is an important information for later in the video, so take it with a grain of salt, my opinion about the final matches, because I might not have the same excitement that you guys might have had when watching it directly live. Because there is a difference in experience, because I already knew which deck was going to win when I went into the fight. Spoiler alert, we know that Gold Paladin won thanks to his GBA turn, and although it was a pretty unique way to win with an Ezel deck, I do have my issues with the fight in general, how it played out, because the match should have ended around turn 3 or 4, because the Gold Paladin player could go into his Ultima turn when his opponent just has been ridden up to grade 3, as he had a Ultimate Stride discard in his hand, he had 1 face down damage, but he has a Lucius on the board and a Bobo in hand, and he had 3 G Guardians in hand, he had 3 heal triggers in hand. When his opponent attacked in his rearguard Lucius, the only thing he had to do was G-Guard with his Dismal on his Lucius, and he was set for game. And we know that he has a Dismal in his deck, because with his deck profile that he did, and also when he flipped over through his G-Zone later in the match, we saw the Dismal. So if he did that, he secured his Lucius, then he could just Ultimate Stride into his Ultima, use Lucius, call out the Bobo, and he then had 2 face-up damage, and he then could use the skill and then kill his opponent, because we knew that his opponent wouldn't get a 6 damage heal, because those heals were near the top of the deck, as those heals would come up a couple of turns later. Then the following turn he also didn't go into Glorious Raining, which was an option, and the casters also noted this, that it was odd that he didn't go in Glorious Raining, the same that he didn't go in his Ultima turn, made the whole match seem weird and awkward, and there were so many weird plays. But that's just my personal nitpicks on the fight. Besides that, it is a hell of a show. Going for the GB8 and then finishing off, it is entertaining, especially during a live stream to have a climactic ending. It is a satisfying ending if you just want to watch it for entertaining base. But for me as a competitive player to watch for the optimized plays and seeing the best of the best, it was kind of disappointing. And I might be harsh, but it just is. And I'm gonna be honest with that, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Entertaining, yes, but not really much more than that. Then on the standard side of things, this is a whole different aspect, because they were fast, quick, and very decisive, but also very on point. Both the Nubatama player and the Luquier player, they played in... I couldn't really detect a giant misplay or something they could have done better. They made the right calls. They played with the best to their capabilities with the cards they were dealt. They didn't have the best options in all scenarios, but they maneuvered pretty excellent through their ways. And I can only say then, well deserved to our Luquier player. Of course, the fight was a lot shorter than the premium fight, and that could basically rob us of the whole bombastic final of the fight is over, we finally won, because it was so quick. You lack that investment in a fight when a fight is extended to 3/4 to an hour. That was the case for the premium fight, because that fight was taking so long. Once we finally had a winner, that could bring out excitement because you were really invested in that match. And because that wasn't with standard, this basically really brings up the issue that we need best out of 3 back into top 8, especially for the finals, because those matches will go longer and it will keep us watchers more invested into the fight and then really be excited to finally have a winner out of it. And having a winner in like a split of a second might be entertaining for that couple of seconds, or in this case the 20 minutes. But once we have a winner, it lacks a little bit of that magical excitement you usually get. And it doesn't take away from any of the fights, but it's just from an entertaining point of view, it lacked that. So it's really funny. The premium side was entertaining, but lacked in the professional side. But then the standard is the complete opposite, where, in my opinion, they played pretty damn well and they didn't really make a significant mistake. But it lacked in the entertainment side because it was so quickly done. But with that said about the finals, we can go over in the actual tournament what happened there. Because for all that's holy, for the love of Messiah, Bushiroad, please bring back top cut best out of 3. Having a best out of 1 for your world championship is honestly a disgrace to competitive players. It's ridiculous. How can we take this seriously if these ridiculous things like a G-assist on turn 1 that happened to the Grand Blue player can basically screw you over and there's nothing you can do about it because best out of 1. It's a card game. There is RNG involved, and best out of 3 eliminates that to a certain degree. That we at least can see players to their actual potential, that they can shine what they can do, that we can have these stories about something, about a player being 1-0 behind and then suddenly bring it back with 2 immense impressive wins and then taking it all. That's basically being robbed from us. And if you cannot do it for the entire tournament, fine, at least have it for top 8. And have some dignity and bring it to the entire season. Because having regionals and then worlds just entirely consistent out best out of 1 is ridiculous. Other than that, we also need to take a look at the positive sides, because there were plenty of positive sides of the tournament itself. The location was a pretty nice location itself. It looked very slick, it looked very clean. Also the casters had a pretty nice segment itself. They also had an audience place. I'm not sure how it was showcased in the previous years, as it was on a different location, but on the pictures that were shown each and every single year, it wasn't really that clear. This time around, I had a better understanding of what the room looked like and how players were seated, and also the way that people could enter and exit. It looked a lot more friendlier and opener than the previous years. Also, of course, the biggest plus about this tournament than every other single tournament is that the number 1 is automatically invited to next year. This, although best out of 1 top cut doesn't really promote competitive play, that surely does, because now we can see on Worlds a more competitive scene as players have something to strive for. Having the automatic invite and your paid exclusive trip and hotel stays for that World invite is a big enough reason to commit and bring in your A game to Worlds. But follow that up with best out of 3. It's the least thing you can do. Now with that part of the way, let's dive into the live stream, which was completely different than we've seen with previous years. There were improvements, but there were certainly also things that were lacking, and in some cases felt even worse than previous years. And that has to do with probably Bushiroad tried to do way too much, which basically gave us less than they would if they tried less. So first off, let's take a look at the positive stuff, because there were positive stuff that we need to highlight. We now get 2 different live streams, so we can watch more matches. That's a big upside. Now we're not only limited to a single table, now we can have 2 matches at the same time, and we can see more of the different games. Also, a better thing about this is that because they have 2 live streams, they can showcase more than 1 games, because I believe most of the previous live streams were only focused around Vanguard, which I don't mind as a Vanguard player, but I can imagine for White Swartz and Buddy Fight players that they also want to see their game. This allows them to also watch their games to be play out through the rounds, and not only the finals that we had in previous years. Also, another nice thing about this live stream in particular was the extra focus on the analysis from the previous season, as we got some good meta-analysis about which clan topped in which region, what is the meta in specific regions, also the pull-through rate through every deck, so we know how many people were bringing a certain deck to a tournament, but how well did they perform actually on that tournament. Those different elements, and also the discussion of the casters themselves, why certain decks improve or why certain decks are performing pretty well, was a fresh take on the whole post, after, and between talk between every single round, or before round started. And that is a big plus, as it will basically give us something to listen between rounds, or give more a more color to what is happening on the stream, as now we get a better behind the scene picture of what was happening before these players made it to this world stage, and why we are seeing them right now. That is a big plus, and I hope they're gonna continue every single year. And then the final big thing that they added in this live stream is that they also have to now post interview with the champion of their respective game. That's a big thing, because now we actually can see their reactions, their emotions, and what they were thinking right from the moment that they won the match. It really gives these people a podium and bring those people to the international community and make somewhat celebrities, more people. It's not going to be about a specific build or a specific deck. Now we actually hopefully are going to see players being in the limelight, and those are going to be the ones that remembered for by. Now, with all the good things said, there are still some major issues that needs to be addressed about these live streams. First off, why were there 4 casters? I get that you have more than 2 casters because you want to switch the team, and not everybody can keep casting, especially with 4 games. That's impossible. But why were there 4 casters present at the same time? It's too much. It was really weird, especially with the fact that the table that they're casting on was not big enough for all 4. And most other games like Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, you see 2 casters, because 2 is a perfect number. You have one person mainly talking at one point, but you have the other person that engages with them or catches them when they're saying something wrong, or when they need to intervene because something else is happening while the person was talking about the specific aspect. That were basically the small things. These were small issue points. Big thing, big problem, they skipped multiple fights. This clearly showed to me, and it's what combination with another thing that I'm going to talk about, is that there was a bad or a lack of communication between the different teams. It felt like we had a team that was organizing the tournament itself. You have the tournament organizer and then the players, and they were doing the thing. And you had the live stream, the casters. And between the live stream and the casters, I believe there were also a separation, because a lot of the times when the casters were done talking and they were informed, we're going to skip over, or we're going to end, we're going to take a break or something like that, you were welcomed with an awkward moment of 5 to 10, maybe 15-second stare like this. It should be instantaneously. I mean, and it isn't even that it should be about super post-production. If you just watch on live streams on Twitch and you see people, I'm gonna take a break. They press a button, instant switch. They go to the break stream. It's a simple press of the button that you can implement. It shouldn't take that long. It felt like that they were saying something, we're going to take a break, and then they need to communicate it to somebody else that was else were in the building that then had to press a button. And that showcased somewhat with the whole aspect that they were missing fights, is that they were talking about an aspect. They were deep in their analysis about the meta and all that kind of stuff, which is good, but because they were doing that, they lacked the communication with the tournament floor, and then while they were doing, they started the first round, and then they were like, oh, we're done, and then, yeah, for first round already started, so we're gonna go to round 2 in a couple of moments when that's done. That shouldn't happen. While they're talking about this, somebody from the tournament organizer should communicate to them, we want to start, we're ready, wrap up your thing in less than 2 minutes, then we can start the rounds and you can start casting around that rounds. It felt like tournament organizers like, alright, we got our time, we'll go. And the reason why that did happen is because of another big problem. They were doing too many games on one single stream. Because they had 4 games, which all were running on a different clock, and they wanted to cast different games between the rounds, there was way too big of a chance that one round of a specific game would be delayed because of time extension or slow play or whatever, that their casting match will take too long, and the following game is already started from something like White Schwartz, which did happen. If they only did Vanguard, only Premium, or only Standard, or only White Schwartz, or only Buddy Fight, this would never be a problem, because the following round can never happen before the previous round is finished and wrapped up. And that is the problem with this stream, is they tried way too much, which ended up giving us less than last year. But you can say they give us a second stream, which is a good thing. Yes, it is a good thing that they gave a second stream. But what's another big problem is, that second stream was basically a still image of just people fighting without audio, without any explanation. We didn't know what was going on, we didn't know what was happening, and for all intents and purposes, they could just remove the stream, and in most cases we didn't actually miss anything, because we didn't know what was going on, there was no audio on it, so if you have that thing on a background and you were doing other things, then suddenly your round already has started, and yeah, you just missed it. Another big example that they lacked on this year's stream, which it did previous years, is basically, take a look at this image. Have you any idea what you're looking at? Yes, I know you're looking at a Cardfight Vanguard match, but can you tell me, who are the players? Which round is this? You probably can't, unless you have seen the live stream and you can exactly remember what round this is from. But in most cases, when you just clicked on the stream midway and you see this image and you see the casters talk out, because this was the main stream, the big stream where all the attention was focused on, you still have no clue what was going on. The casters might scream some names about certain players, but if I tell you the name Chris, do you have any idea what was going on, who that is? Probably not. But if I did this, then it suddenly makes a whole lot of sense and you understand that we're watching Premium Round 2 against these specific players from the Philippines and the Netherlands. That's basically Chris from my team and the buddy from W Slasher, which I was referring to at the beginning of the video. This is a small thing that they can incorporate to make the stream a lot more enjoyable, but also a lot easier to understand what's going on. Because this alludes to another big problem, and one of the major problems that has been overcouping this entire thing is that because they were doing Buddy Fight, Premium, White Schwartz, Standard in one single stream, there was a highly likely chance people didn't stick around the entire stream. This was also the reason what I was hinted at the beginning of the video, that halfway through the stream, I was just like, it's 4 o'clock at night. The only thing that's going to be interesting for me are the last fights. That's going to be in like 4 hours. I'm going to go to bed. And I will see it later in the date because there's no reason for me to stick around. That's what people are gonna do. They're gonna stop watching because they're not interested in like more than 50% of your content. And if they come back later down the match, they're like, oh, alright, where are we now? Did they have any delays? Did something happen? Is there something I missed? And they cannot get these answers unless the casters tell them directly what was going on and which round they are. But in most cases, they only say that at the beginning of the fight. And if you jump in the middle of it, you have no clue until the fight is over. So I cannot talk negative about the stream if I cannot bring up some improvements myself to reflect on what's happening and give suggestions to Bushrod or anybody that's going to participate next year to have some ideas what they can potentially do for a better stream. First off, continue with the meta-analysis that they did. Do that and improve on it. Make it more engaging about what was happening with the players themselves. Have more in-depth about specific decks. With you had those screenshots about specific decks, then show those screenshots while talking about the specific decks and explain which decks will work best and which won't and what we've seen. Also discuss about the specific players that participated in this current Worlds and explain with what deck they qualified for Worlds. Explain how they did that. Explain their tactics. So have a more personal story about the players themselves, because Worlds isn't a story about the game per se. Sure it is, but it's also a story about the players that are playing at Worlds, because they had a journey to go to that floor, to go to that stage, and then perform on live television for us players to showcase what the best of the best can do in this game. Bring that more to attention to us. Bring those personal stories to light. You can do this by analyzing and talking and discussing about their decks which they performed with and how they did that, maybe their matchups, because those are public knowledge. We know which matchups they had, at least in top 8, because Bushrod releases those. Another thing that you can do, but it might be a little bit too much. I think it's too much, but this can be something you can look for in the future, is more maybe have some interviews with some of the players, have that pre-recorded, and showcase that on a live stream in between segments when we have nothing to discuss and there's nothing to showcase those segments, that we have something to fill up that isn't a commercial. Another thing when we're talking about pre-recorded stuff, what they also can do is just pre-record different things. Maybe a pre-record an analysis about a deck. Let's say, for example, they ask me to pre-record stuff. I can record a small video of 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, about me explaining with showcasing how a specific Luquier combo or how the deck works, so people watching at home immediately understand how the deck functions, and when they see it on a live stream, they're like, oh, yeah, now we're gonna see that probably in action, or maybe not, and then, oh, he's not doing that, but he's doing this. It will engage with the viewers and you will have pre-recorded stuff. So if for some reason things extend, you can just pop that pre-recorded thing in there and just fill a slot up. Another thing is, do not focus on multiple games on a single stream unless you have the perfect management that you can prevent what was happening this year, that we're skipping fights. In most cases, that's not going to be a thing. If we're going to be really realistic about it, I'm not going to see that that's a thing. So what their best bet is, just do one game on a live stream, and because they showcase that they can do 2 live streams, you can showcase 2 games. So they can do Vanguard on one game and another game on the other live stream, maybe Buddy Fight or Wise Swart, and you can appease the folk. Of course, you cannot show everything, and you will have 2 separate casting teams, but if we go out on a limb, if I go out on a limb and say, what's the perfect option for if we live in a utopia? I think the perfect thing to please everybody and have the best quality live stream possible is basically split it up, split Worlds up, and making it more of a spectacle. So what I mean with that is you have one day, premium, and another game. Then another game, standard, and the other game. Both have a live stream active, so both the days have 2 live streams, and that's it. But you can take it a step further and take a look at what they're doing with Hearthstone. Do Swiss rounds only on the first 2 days of the weekend. So Friday and Saturday. And Sunday you have the top 8 of all the games in succession. So first in the morning Vanguard, then Buddy Fight, then Standard, then Wise Swords. And then afterwards you have the ceremony where we conclude all the winners of the games. And then we have an entire weekend where everything is focused. Sure, this is not gonna be a thing. It's just very optimistic about what could happen in the future. But if this was your tournament structure, you can do best out of 3 for all games. You can focus on each live stream, because what you can do is have 2 casters for both streams and 1 single caster that can do both, that can switch up with the casters if they need a break. And because you're now following one stream, you will always feature every round a match, and between matches you can put small talks, you can showcase these pre-recorded stuff, you can showcase, maybe talk about the meta-analysis, and fill it up when needed. You don't always have to fill it up, but when you have the time, you have stuff to fill things up. But with that utopia said, at the very least next year, my biggest advice is focus on one major game for one single stream. If you do 2 streams, you maybe can do on the second stream just random matches of different games, but focus your main stream on one single game to prevent these mishaps. If they still insist on showcasing all the 4 games, which just in itself makes a pretty clusterfuck of a live stream, if they really insist on it, they should at least make the communication part a lot better. Because from my standpoint, from watching the live stream, it felt super disorganized as so many things went wrong, and they really need to step that up. If they have somebody overseeing the entire tournament and that one is going to call the shots when rounds start and when not, that person needs to communicate with the casters when he wants to start a next round, and not just 10 seconds before he wants to do it, but like 2 minutes in advance, so they can wrap up what they're doing or have an understanding of, alright, this is going to be a thing or not, and we're going to proceed to do this, or they at least have a time to think about it. And they had extra heads because they had 4 different people for the casting table, and only 2 at the time need to cast. They need to talk. So if the tournament organizer wants to talk with the casters, he can then talk with the 3rd or 4th person about what's going on, and they can think of a solution of what's the best thing to proceed going step for next. But if they then make a decision about we're gonna cancel a game or not stop, talk with the audience immediately. Because sure, they talked about this in some points, but it was usually afterwards and not on the spot. So it felt like they didn't have a complete control. They did say it soon with a White Swartz 5th round when we didn't see it, and then it showcased that we're going to see the semifinals, which was controversial. But they didn't do it with the very first round of the tournament. And the fact that you miss your schedule in the first 30 minutes is concerning. That it needs to be worked on the most if they want to continue the way that they want to do it for next year. Because personally, I think this live stream was fine. It was better in some ways, but worse in others. But when I take a look at the online comments and what people are saying about it, not a lot of people are pleased with it. And it's understandable because they did drop the ball on some important aspect that made the stream less enjoyable to watch and felt like a clusterfuck. But that's where I'm gonna stop this, because currently I've been rambling on way too long. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought about the live stream. What were your opinion about the contents of the live stream, and not only the live stream in particular itself, but also maybe the matches that you've seen on the show, the finals, what you think about it. Do you agree with my opinions? What is your suggestion, what they can do for next year to improve on? Because there are ways to improve. But not only that, also tell me, what did you like about the live stream? Because they did try some new stuff, and some of the new stuff that they try were a good step in the right direction, but might flawed in their execution. So let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Last week we talked about the potential type 3 markers and all the possibilities that could make them to be when Bushiroad released the new product Livestream. However, with the livestream behind us, we know that type 3 markers aren't going to be a thing of the near future. We did get the whole new mechanic with these tickets and orders. But let's take a look at what you guys said about my ideas and what potentially can be a good thing for type 3 markers. A lot of you guys, like Jinhui, said that you guys wanted a increase of shield value on the guard circle for a new protect marker. So basically the marker goes on the guardian circle and every single guardian from that point onward has an increase in shield value. I understand that because this was a thing basically when Protect 1 became a thing. People were talking about that they actually wanted this instead of a perfect guard, when at the time we thought that the perfect guard marker was the weakest of them all. Lo and behold, at the time that standard began, it was the most powerful one. But Yoshiro-chan made a good, interesting statement about how they can implement this in a more balanced way. Because if you have 5k shield on every single Guardian onto the field, and that could stack, that would basically mean that any Protect deck could just spiral out of control if they can generate multiple markers. Think about Zerheal or think about Witches. They could become an infinite wall that nobody could break over through. Alternative for this is very interesting as it just increases the shield value of the very first Guardian that you place on the circle, and it does stack with it. So if you have 2, that's plus 10k shield on the first Guardian, which is pretty interesting as that basically means that you have increased shield value on every single attack, but not to an insane amount, as if you use 3 Guardians for 1 attack, only 1 will benefit from it, which have some balancing aspect to it. It gives a more balanced feel about it. So it's an interesting approach. We might see it in the future, we might not see it. It depends if they go with these new tickets and order route. Either they can improve on that, or it might be a telling sign that Bushiroad will just try incorporate different types of mechanics, and new gift markers might not actually be a standardized thing for the future. So we have to hold our breath and see how this works. Xbot02, I meant, of course, in what Bushiroad said about how Force is interpreted. As they said, Axel is aggressive, Protect is defensive, and Force is balanced. But being balanced in a descriptive kind of way isn't the exact same thing as being balanced in a game design way. The ultimate creature of chaos made a very interesting call about this whole negate marker that some people devised in the previous video, that instead that the marker itself just negates ability, as a lot of you guys pointed out that some decks just will die. Luquier, for example, will just die as they can negate Luquier's ability, and then the deck does nothing. You just wasted 2 counterless and it does nothing. With his example that to negate the effect, you need to pay the same cost, makes a very interesting meta game possible, as then damage denying opponents brings a whole new thing to the table, as it just jumps up in a roof of skill level, as there's so much more things you need to think about, as just random negating skills might not always be a good thing, and also you can put your opponent in a situation where it just outright cannot negate your main ability. Think about something like Nova Grappler's Hero VR spinning Valent that needs a counterless 4. There's a big chance that your opponent can never negate that if you don't give them those 4 open counterblasts. So it is an interesting thing, especially with all these different types of costs that you need to pay, like resting a unit. If your opponent just attacked you with all their units, they can no longer rest something, so they can never negate an ability that needs to rest a unit for a cost. So it makes a whole different aspect to it. However, Muka called Dio made a good call, as it can just nullify PGs completely, as they can just discard a card and then they destroy your PG, so your attack just go through anyways. However, there are 2 things that you can fix this. Either you make that these negate things don't work during your turn and you can only use them as reactive during your opponent's turn, so you can never interact with their guardians, or you can make negates work against negates, as if negates markers are a thing, or they could become a order type, then you can have this negate off going on, and your opponent might be inclined to not use it at certain situations, as they can just negate it. As if you want to use the PG, the cost is a discard, they can use the negate, discard a card, negate the PG. But then the opponent, with a negate in hand, can say, alright, I'm gonna negate your negate, so I'm gonna discard again a card, because the cost of the negate was a discard, and then the negate and the PG will still be inactive. Either options is fine, it depends on what you like, what kind of implementation you like. If you want to have a less negate interaction heavy thing, then go for it. You cannot use it during your turn, but if you don't really mind for that and you want those extra level of mind plays, then have negates work on negates with the original cost attached to it. So those are all options available. And that's basically everything for today's video. Just a reminder, leave in the comments down below what you thought about the live streams, all your thoughts and opinions, and I will highlight the most interesting stuff next week. This has been a really long video. I hope I can compress it, because we already reached the 1 hour mark here. So with that said, I want to thank my Patreon supporters over at Patreon for making this video and everything happening on the channel possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel, everything that's happening on the channel, then head over to patreon.com/Vanguard Insider and become a Patreon today. Well, with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleaf, and I see you guys in the next one!